on the left side. And if there's not, put a crossing, you could always tag this as crossing equals node to kind of in like use this view to fill everything out and make sure that you've audited everywhere correctly. Um, Another thing you can do with this tool is figure out, is your sidewalk network connected? And there's a lot of definitions for sidewalk network. So on the left, you can kind of change some settings. This is only looking at kind of highway equals footway and other related tags. And you can see near the university in Tempe, like there's some service roads or something causing a disconnect according to this current definition. I mentioned Mapillary. The tool is trying to be a hopefully easy to use editor, and as part of that, there's different base maps built in, and also Mapillary integration to help spot those problems on the ground. A final thing this tool does is, I think, like less interesting from the mapping perspective. If you are using sidewalk data to do pedestrian safety analysis, or you have a like routing engine that sort of expects separate sidewalks and crossings to exist very consistently and not mix the styles, Speedwalk includes some experimental tools to kind of auto-generate separate sidewalks from the road center line. This is never meant to be used for mapping. This is only kind of for these analysis cases that need to see data consistently. And there's a lot of sort of issues with automatic generation, but it can be helpful sometimes. A quick example of what this looks like, starting with the purple roads kind of on the left side have separate sidewalks, and the blue roads are tagged something like sidewalk equals left, right, both. After we generate sidewalks, you can maybe see, or maybe it's hard to see in the screenshot, but everything becomes a bit more consistent. And zooming in, originally, this is an example in Berlin where all we had was the center lines in purple. And after automatic generation, we produced the sidewalks in black and all of the crossings in green. Most of these crossings are crossing equals no, or whatever the crossing node on the road that's been manually mapped is. The next step that we want to do with this is, if you've been in the sidewalk channel in the Slack, people are talking about is side path of and some other ways of matching up sidewalks to the road. There's definitely possibility to do this automatically and then have a person sort of verify that the matching is done correctly. And so this is something that we want to try next. Special thanks to everybody from the Sidewalk Slack who has tested this tool so far, and also from Tobias from Fix My City, who's collaborated with me on this tool the last few months. So try the tool out here, and please get in touch if you have any questions about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you to all of your work for pedestrian mapping. We are ahead of time, incredible. And it is my pleasure to introduce the new set of speakers, Harold and Sean, who will be speaking on street level imagery collection to improve the map. Pass it to y'all.
Okay, thank you so much. In keeping with the theme, we're going to talk about collecting street level imagery, specifically mapillary imagery. I am Sean Whitcomb. My username is mycoda, and I'll be speaking with Harold, who is Hobbs V. Boyle. So just a quick disclosure, both of us received a free camera from OpenStreetMap US and Mapillary as part of the Mapillary Camera Grant Program last year. And we also received some small monetary awards for contributing to the Complete the Map project, which was a big thing to try to get a lot more mapillary imagery on the map.
Yeah, hi, I'm Harold. And yeah, I'll say a little bit more about the grant program in case some of you are interested in that. So this is a partnership between OpenStreetMap US and Mapillary, and the way it works is you fill out a online application form where you say a little bit about yourself, your contributions to OpenStreetMap, if you've contributed to Mapillary before, and what you intend to do with the imagery, where you intend to collect imagery. Pretty quick application, and if you are selected for the grant program, then you receive a box in the mail, and that box has a 360-degree GoPro Max, I think now GoPro Max 2 camera in it, and a bunch of accessories to like mount it to your car, to your bike, to your whatever, to your canoe maybe. We talked about water-based mapping earlier. And yeah, then you go out and collect data. There's no firm obligation that you have to collect at least whatever this many thousand images or something. But since we are among other mapping and street level imagery collection nerds, The 35 grant recipients in this latest round, as of last week, apparently collected 4.89 million images and covered 17,360 kilometers of roads, paths, sidewalks in the US. So that's pretty cool. The grant program is still open, and we'll share a link probably in the Slack channel later. And yeah, so why do you want to collect street level imagery? Maybe this is an obvious thing for people who attend this talk, but really it can enable rapid improvement of OpenStreetMap data in a very efficient way. With just one picture and then the next picture, picture, you can capture so much. This is just an example of one of the images I took in downtown Madison. And the red boxes, I added those just to highlight some things. So going from left to right, like you see there's a restaurant and has a sign in the window that says that that's permanently closed. You have a couple of trash and recycling bins, you have a traffic light, you have a bench where you can determine whether it has a backrest or not. You have some trees where you can maybe determine what kind of tree this is. There's a do not enter sign, a speed limit, curb cut. We talked about pedestrian mapping. There's tactile paving. And so all of this you can capture in this image, which is much better than like relying on your own memory or having to stop, taking notes, taking sketches. So yeah, it has really boosted my own mapping.
So how do you actually do this? The easiest way to start is, especially if you don't have some kind of fancy GPS-enabled camera, you can just do it straight from your smartphone. There's a Mapillary app for iOS and for Android. You can just go open up the app and then walk around, drive around. As long as you got a clear image of what's in front of you, the app works really well and just immediately puts it into the Mapillary site. But what we've done, since we have the GoPro cameras, depending on whether you're biking, walking, or driving, you're going to want to take either time-lapse photos, those are a little bit slower, or video if you're driving, because the frame rate is a lot faster and you're not going to miss as many things. The camera already has GPS in it, so it knows exactly where you're located. And then once you have all of the images or the video on your camera, you just basically take out the SD card, put it in your computer, and then there's a desktop app or a command line interface, or you can just go right onto the Mapillary website and directly upload there. So it really couldn't be easier. And then Mapillary does all the post-processing, so they're going to blur out faces, they're going to blur out license plates and all of that stuff. And like we mentioned, you can do this while you're biking, which is what Harold and I have done a lot of. You can do it while you're walking. You can do it while you're driving. You're canoeing, whatever. And you know, it's not just for streets. It really is for trails. It's for rivers. Any place you might want to capture imagery.
Yeah, I'll talk just a little bit more about what Sean already mentioned with biking. I don't have a car, so I either have to walk or I guess I could canoe too. But yeah, most of my imagery collection is by bike. So you see me with my dorky googly eye helmet, and Sean is on the right there. Couple things to note with that. We found that attaching the camera to the helmet works best. You only see a little bit of your helmet, but it gives you a nice 360 unobstructed view. Took me a while to find the right kind of helmet that worked with the camera. It's important to keep in mind, speaking of the season, in winter, you don't have a whole lot of daylight to work with, and you really do want to have a decent amount of daylight to capture clean, crisp imagery that's then really usable. You see that I have the camera mounted with the two lenses facing side to side. That's because usually what you're interested in mapping is to your side and not right in front and right behind you. That's where the road surface is. So that's useful because that's where the camera produces the best images. And as Sean mentioned, there's this question of like, do you take time-lapse photos or do you take continuous video? On the bike, I'm taking time-lapse photos because I find the image quality a little bit better, but there's limitations, like it only takes an image every 2 seconds. And on a bike, that's usually fine at bike speeds, but in a car, you couldn't do that. Yeah, so if you have any questions about like the gory technical details of all of this, we'll also share some links to some resources to that, but yeah, feel free to use the Q&A for that. One example I want to show here is an example of bike infrastructure in Madison. If you haven't heard, Madison is a very bike-friendly city, and we're still getting new bike infrastructure built. And I find that's quite hard to add to OpenStreetMap if you don't have it on aerial imagery. And that aerial imagery takes like usually a year or sometimes 2 years until it shows up. And I found having the street level imagery really makes that much easier. So you see here, this was a conversion of a road that used to be 2 lanes in each direction to a protected bike lane, 1 car road and a car lane. And then in the background, you can kind of see in the shade, there's also bus rapid transit platform. And you see on the left, now that's all been nicely mapped, partly by me, but also once the imagery is available, other people can use it as well. And yeah, it's a really good way to improve this detailed bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, and transit infrastructure that Sean is quickly going to talk about.
Yeah, so I was also able to get some new bike infrastructure in Tempe, Arizona, but there's also plenty of other things you can map. So we recently got a new light rail extension in Phoenix, and it opened in June, shortly after I got my GoPro camera. And so I headed over there, was on the very first train of that new light rail extension, and I was able to map every single platform and stop location all along the way, well before there's any imagery. That's probably not going to come out again for a year or two. And I was even able to get this on the map before it was on Google Maps. I had this fully mapped within about 2 days of riding on that, just using Mapillary imagery and being able to figure out the locations of all the stops and everything along the way. There's still plenty to map. You know, you can map benches, you can map garbage cans, you can map drinking fountains and all of that based on the Mapillary imagery that I captured.
Yeah, and we're going to end the talk to just briefly talk about, so this is specifically the OpenStreetMap/Mapillary Camera Grant Program. So Mapillary supports this program. They have been supporters of OpenStreetMap for a long time. They've been around since 2013. It is important to note, though, I mean, they are owned by a very large tech corporation since 2020. So the way this works is the images are explicitly available for mapping in OpenStreetMap. They're also under a Creative Commons license. But some people might have concerns about contributing images to that large tech company. There might be concerns related to like, well, what if the AI bubble bursts and tech companies have to cut costs? If Mapillary goes away, what happens with the images? So we do want to mention that there's Panoramax, which is a free open source, very OpenStreetMap aligned street level imagery platform. It's more recent, it's been around for a couple of years. The way it works, it has multiple decentralized instances that then come together and make the imagery available. There are some, so this, we probably have a mostly US audience here. There is no US instance for Panoramax at this point. You are able to upload to the French instance right now, with some limitations in that. But yeah, I mean, what I've been doing is I upload to Mapillary and I upload to Panoramax at the same time, just to have that extra redundancy. And yeah, I also feel much better about supporting a open source, open project. And with that, we have a slide with a couple of resources on there. I'll paste those into the Slack channel because this is not that great. But I would encourage everybody, if you're into this, go out, collect imagery, apply for the camera grant. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harold and Sean. Love the photos in the deck as well. Just wanted to say that. It's also my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Winslow, who will be giving a talk on making invasive species management easier to do. Pass it to you, Winslow. You are muted.
How's that?
We can hear you.
Okay, can you see my stuff?
Yes, it's not full screen though, just letting you know. Oh, now it is.
Let me try a presenter view because that should be much better.
Looks great.
Thanks. Great to be with you all here today. Our work at Fable Forestry, just to give this all a little bit of context, deals with human-centered design and ecological restoration. And I'm stoked to talk to you about how those align to the principles inherent in invasive species management. So just to give you the general overview here, I'm a commercial drone pilot, a design researcher, a farmer and a beekeeper, and a dad to a bunch of kiddos. And we're doing a bunch of stuff up here in Maine, and anybody is welcome to the farm if you're in the area. We're based out of Freeport. So I fly drones with custom payloads, and we do a lot of rapid prototyping. And one of the things that we do a lot of, especially during the season of growing food, is think about how to most effectively can we grow this food for people. One of the biggest threats to growing food that we are seeing more and more of is invasive species. And I want to talk a little bit about why we're focused on invasive species, where human behavior comes into all of this, and what in the world does this mean for mapping, because there is a common thread here, this being OSM. So let's start with invasive species for a second. As of 2019, the UN announced that invasive species damages cost everybody in the world about $432 billion. That number is going up. Milding winters are making a lot of things more difficult. We all know that invasive species impact public health, water systems, food security, and local economies. And if you are not familiar with invasive species management, I'll give you the 30-second sort of TLDR. Essentially, the longer an issue goes undetected or unresolved, the more expensive it becomes, right? So when species are first detectable, and note that I didn't say detected, they're inexpensive and they're easier to control and deal with because their populations are small. Obviously, once knowledge of that problem increases, eradication becomes more challenging because the scope of the problem has increased, right? So remember that invasive species usually lack the kinds of biological controls that keep them in check wherever they're coming from. So as new reports begin to tell the story of the problem and you see it in the news and people are talking about it on the radio, eradication is now already more difficult, if not impossible. And so you start to see things like this coming up on YouTube. And some of the imagery is pretty striking. And if you encounter things like kudzu, it's really a gut punch, to be able to deal with this. Right. So if we continue to think about what happens with eradication, it becomes less and less likely. This is kudzu again, sort of not only taking over the ground cover, but also climbing trees. It can become pretty discouraging for a local economy to think about how to deal with an issue like this. So speed matters, right? The invasion curve is demonstrating why does speed matter? Because at the earliest phase, we can prevent or eradicate these issues before they become really expensive and really problematic, to the tune of trillions of dollars. And so communities will spend trillions of dollars on the dams associated with invasive species in the future. And as farmers, that's just not something that we can handle or deal with. So why aren't we acting? Well, a lot of this has to do with human behavior, right? Even if people have the information about doing something, it's unlikely that that information will directly change attitudes or behaviors. That's called the information action fallacy. And also the mapping tools are inadequate to deal with invasive species management because they're usually just telling the story of the problem at a current point in time, and it takes a long time to enter that information. So much so that folks who do this kind of work typically don't enter information, even when it's their job to do so. So we wanted to come up with a different tool that would make that easier for people to do. So before we get into the tool, I just wanted to give a little bit of context to the science of habit formation and how behavior works, because this is my training, this is my background. If you're familiar with Dr. BJ Fogg's work out of Stanford, you'll know this model already. But behavior happens when you have sufficient motivation, ability, and a prompt occur in the same moment, right? So you could have high or low motivation, and motivation is mercurial. It moves all over the place all the time, and it's influenced by sleep, caffeine, all sorts of things. How easy does something seem to do is how ability is defined. And often we talk about it as perceived simplicity that's divided into things like time, money, physical effort, and so on and so forth. And then there's this action line, which sort of shows you where behaviors will occur. So if prompted above this action line, and if motivation and ability are at this peak point, then a behavior will occur. If they're below that action line, then a behavior won't occur. So let's take an example. Jazzy, will you donate $1 to OSM if I ask you to?
Yes.
Sweet. Yeah, probably because your motivation is high. It has nothing to do with your job or affiliation, right? It seems easy to do. $1 is not a crazy amount of money. And when I ask you, that's the prompt, you say yes. I'm not going to ask you this next one. I'll ask myself, Wenzel, will you donate $10,000 to OSM? And I'll say, not ready to do that quite yet, even though my level of motivation is the same, right? So it just became harder to do. So I no longer can do it. And so the secret to this the model is that if you can make behaviors seem easy enough to do, they will reliably occur at any level of motivation. And this is incredibly important and very infrequently applied in the world of invasive species management. So what are we going to do about all this? We think that we should make nature intelligence easier to capture because we want to make sure that these problems are as easily managed as possible. This is Japanese knotweed. It's a major problem here in Maine. It outcompetes just about every other natural plant life that we have, and it's especially problematic along roadsides where soils have been disturbed. So naturally, we call this product knotweed, as in knotweeds. We just spell it a little different, very tongue-in-cheek. And so we found out that we could use these smart buttons, which were depicted there with our friendly fox. Click this button whenever I'm in the truck when I'm passing by Japanese knotweed. And in just 21 days, I was able to click this over 4,000 times and create a map of where Japanese knotweed is occurring and create these density maps. This is information that I've uploaded to Mapbox. So it's very interactive. I think that this should play a little video. It should just show you some of the interactivity with it. And it allows us to start thinking about where should we be spending our time to triage this issue. And if we're not spending our time triaging this issue while it's small, there are just going to be bigger costs ahead of us. That's just the arc of invasive species. So that's what we have to look forward to if we don't. Harold and Sean, I just threw this in the slide deck because I want to talk to you guys after this about 360 cameras, because I've been doing this and I'm curious about how we can map invasive species and street level data. So I threw one of these cameras on the back of the farm truck, drove around, and I really want to talk with you and talk with other people here at the conference, or ping me afterwards. My email is winslow@fableforestry.com. How could we be using this technology, which is very lightweight, to capture invasive species data and get ahead of some of these problems that are coming our way? One of the curiosities I have is how can we activate the GoPro camera using that data that we've already captured where triage levels are very high. And I think there may be some neat ways to do that with the SDKs that are out there. Again, another conversation, such that maybe when somebody is rocking one of these cameras and they enter into a geofence zone, they can automatically take some imagery for us, assuming permissions and all that. So that's a curiosity of mine with Mapbox. So what does this all mean for mapping? Of course, it started with invasive species, but it means that there are many other ways now that we can be logging nature intelligence. Municipalities can use this button to track support and rescue, asset management. We can use it for strategic vegetation management to reduce wildfire risk and plan some prescribed burns. Citizen scientists can use this to log nature intelligence that's affecting your commute. And even our youngest citizen scientists can get involved with GIS. Start collecting some data about what is it that they care about. That's a project that we're starting to talk about in the state of Massachusetts. And maybe they'll be the ones to help us crack kudzu, right? This is a big, big, big problem. And it's just one of many problems that we all face, in a global economy. Research professionals can use these buttons to ground truth satellite imagery or track anything else that they're curious about. And then parks and rec folks can get a handle on trails data at the pace of recreation. So you can button mount right on the handlebars. And you don't even have to stop and take out your phone to log information of pinch points or washouts or whatever. Land stewards around the world can get rid of their phones for a little bit, or at least put them in their pockets while they're walking around and spend more time on nature and less time on their screens. And I just wanted to end with this slide because this is an important point that was made to me recently, and it's really stuck with me. And that point is that everything in our built environment is either mined or it's grown. Your room, your chair, all of the devices we're using to communicate right now, everything is mined or grown. And so we believe that ecological restoration is a team sport, And behavioral science tells us that one of the best ways we can do this work is to make ecological restoration seem easier to do. So I'd love to chat some more with anybody on this call. This is our website, knotweed.com, and you can reach me again at winslow@fableforestry.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Winslow. Thank you to all the presenters. We have a little bit of time to answer questions. So I'm gathering some from the Slack. This one goes out to Sean and Harold. What does the bike and car mount look like for the GoPro? Does it sit outside the car?
Okay, so I can answer the bike mount was just what we saw in those slides. It just sits on your helmet, and the one that comes standard with the kit has some sticky adhesive on it, so it just sticks. But that's basically just for the front facing. But if you want it sideways, like Harold has, you need to kind of strap it down with some straps or at least zip ties or something like that. But the car mount one, kind of interesting. It's actually three really large, powerful suction cups. And then it has a little stand that you screw the camera onto. And I didn't trust that, this would handle like freeway speeds, but it totally does, as long as you clean off the top of your car pretty well. And then there's also the kit comes with an extension pole, telescoping pole. And for a little while, I was taking that pole and trying to like hook it up to like the back rack of my bike or put it in a backpack or something. But there are a lot of technical issues. So really, the helmet's the best way. But that pole, if you're driving slower speeds, you can actually put the pole onto the suction cup thing and extend it pretty far, so it's pretty high above your car, and that way you get a much better view, and you're not just looking at mostly the top of your car, or, the hood and things like that. But again, if you get the grant, all of that stuff just comes in the kit, and it's really easy to use.
Yeah, just quick note on the bike helmet mount. I think I mentioned that. Like I have like 3 bike helmets at home, and like 2 of them didn't work at all. 1 of them only kind of worked. So there's some experimentation because bike helmets are different, and you might have to experiment a little bit with the specific mount. So yeah, be prepared for that.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And with that, we are at time. We are going to take a 10-minute break for folks who can put questions in the chat, continue to fill in the Q&A, put them in the Mapping USA Slack, and we'll see you back at 2:50. Thanks, y'all. I'm going to pass to our fearless OSM board leader, our president, Matt. Pass it to you, Matt.
Hooray. All right, let's see if I did this right. I think I've done it right. Hey, welcome everybody. This is going to be this is labeled as board session. So that's a chance for us all to say hi. For those of you who don't know, OpenStreetMap US has a elected board of directors that helps run things and provide oversight and guidance to the organization. We have an election coming up. If you are interested in being part of the board, I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But real quick, here is our current 5-member board. And that's all available on our website. Speaking of our website, I figured I'd do a quick tour of some of my favorite parts of the website and the kind of things we have going on here. One thing that has been mentioned is becoming a member. You can become a member for $20 US. That gives you the voting rights to vote in the upcoming election. We have over 300 members right now. I would love to see that number just shoot through the roof, become 1 million members. Let's do it. If you are part of a bigger organization and want to support us, we offer every tier of organizational support membership that you could possibly want. Reach out to our staff and they will help coordinate those sorts of things. Little bits add up, big bits add up. It all keeps things going and rolling. Let's see what I had on the next slide. You are at one of our 2 big events we do every year, Mapping USA. This is our free virtual conference. We have another event coming up in June. We also do an in-person conference that is State of the Map. This one will be in Madison. We have a couple more days on early bird registration, which is a little cheaper than the regular registration. I know I personally feel better if everybody gets their tickets in early so I can know how many people are going to be there and how much cake to get. So do me a solid and register. Another wonderful thing we do, our events coordinator, Alyssa, runs our Mappy Hour program. This is a series of talks every month where folks can come and share what they're working on, what they want to be working on, an idea, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have an idea for that, reach out there in the Slack or via email. And we can get those hooked up. These are also recorded and available. Go to the merch store, buy some merch, wear your OpenStreetMap merch, let people know about the project. We're very excited. We want to keep doing great things, but we also have to spread the word. All right, now to kind of like more boring stuff. We have an election coming up. It is a 5-member board. You are elected for a 2-year term and you can serve 2 consecutive terms before you got to take a break. So coming up, we have 2 slots that are open. As you can see here, we run the entire thing through the OpenStreetMap wiki, and I will drop these links in various places when I get a chance here. Nominations are currently open. If you want to nominate someone, chat with them first, I recommend, or nominate yourself. That's fine. Add yourself to this wonderful table down here at the bottom. These are all tracked in the wiki, so you can go back and look at previous elections. This is the page for the 2025 election. You can go down, you can see who ran, you can read the position statements of the various candidates. I host mine on the in openstreetmap.org in the diary feature. You can post it wherever you like. Just say a little bit about yourself, what you're interested in about the org, and these sorts of things. If folks have an interest in running and are kind of on the fence, I'm always happy to chat about my experience on the board, give you a little nudge or encouragement, or just answer any questions you have about those sorts of things. So reach out. All right, that is kind of my quick blitz. I would like to leave some time for other board members to chat about things that they would like to chat about. Maybe we'll just do a real quick round of any of the board members who are here. They can say hi, say real quick why they joined the board, why some folks should run, why folks should support the org, et cetera, et cetera. So you've already met Jazzy. Is Harrison here? Let's do Harrison.
I am here. I got started in OpenStreetMap as a hobbyist. It's probably about 5 years ago now. And then I ran for the board because my professional background is in nonprofit finance. So I had a lot of experience kind of working on the other side professionally in that, and then interfacing with boards. And I wanted to bring the expertise from that over to OSMUS and really focus on the finance side of the organization.
Nice. I think Kiri is also here.
Yeah, hi. My name's Kiri Carini. This is my first year serving on the board, and it's been a great experience so far. I would just encourage anyone who's thinking about wanting to support OpenStreetMap to consider nominating yourself. I'm not an expert mapper by any means, but I love the community and the organization, and just wanted to kind of give back in a way that I felt like I could. So.
Perfect. And Jazzy, you got more to add? I assume.
Yes. Let's see. I have always really enjoyed maps and didn't really know or didn't have a language for it. Like I was someone before I even was involved with OpenStreetMap, I would kind of use like Google Maps and just check out places virtually and just spend time doing that. And through my work, I work at Theta NYC, a civic tech nonprofit. Uh, we use OpenStreetMap to document public space and try and do an analysis on inequities in public space in New York, which is public space is very important here, and it's very sparse. But I don't know, I kind of fell into this really awesome community. State of the Map, I always say this is my favorite conference. I always feel I leave there feeling inspired. And I think I just also, like Kiri, wanted to give back to this community and whatever skills I have, like help it grow. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I would. So some folks have reached out to me about questions about running, and we've had coffee with some things. I was kind of trying to think of what is a kind of common theme. One of the things that folks are worried about when running for the board is they're like, oh, I'm kind of new to this, or I'm only a mapper. I'm not much of a charity organization kind of person, or quite the opposite. I'm very interested in the organizational aspect, but not the mapping aspect. And my sort of general advice is, well, first off, when I got elected to the board, I'd been only a mapper for like 9 months, so don't worry about that part. Your enthusiasm for the project and willingness to contribute in the way that you can is more important than all of those other factors. You do not have to be a power mapper in order to be a good board member. You do not have to be locked into the specifics of running a charity organization to be a good board member. You have to sort of just be willing to show up and, do the work. And the shape of the work can vary pretty wildly. So, yeah, I think that's like the most common thing people ask me. Does anybody have any QA or anything from the bigger group? Can take a minute here. You do have to be a member of the organization in order to run for the board, so make sure to go to that membership page and take care of that part. Just give it just a minute here. Let people type. I have too many screens, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So if somebody sees something, just yell it out. All right. Well, if you do end up having questions, you can always find us easily in the Slack. If you can't get into the Slack, let me know. I've been manually letting people into the Slack every day. We had to move to an invite system like this to keep the robots at bay, but we're doing our best here. Okay, good. A question came in. Is regular membership eligible for board nomination? Yes, membership at any tier. Just you need to be a member. It's part of our bylaws. All right, I will pay attention to the various chats and see if more things come up and we can answer them there. Let's get on with the presentations. I know everyone is very excited. I'm excited about this next one. It's from one of the engineers we have working at OpenStreetMap US, Jake Lowe. He's going to be chatting and telling us all about Sourdough, which is a new vector tile schema for OpenStreetMap. And I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. You should now be able to see it. So yeah, hi, I'm Jake, and I'm here to talk about why I made Sourdough, which is a new vector tile schema for OpenStreetMap. I want to clarify that, as Matt just mentioned, although I work for OpenStreetMap US, this is just a personal project that I've been working on. So advance to the next slide. So what is Sourdough? Sourdough is a schema for representing OpenStreetMap data in vector tile format, which is the format that you would typically use for displaying maps on websites or in apps. It's also a reference implementation of that schema using the Planetile or tile generator. So you can run the code and generate a tile set. And at a high level, it's a tool for cartographers to create inventive new maps that use OpenStreetMap data. So a tile schema basically defines the way that you take the OpenStreetMap planet file and cut it up into little pieces that are small enough that a website or a mobile app can download them and display a map for them. And when you build a tile set, you have to build both high zoom tiles that show the, oh, someone said my slides went away. I'm sorry. Is that better? Hopefully you can all see my screen. Sorry about that.
Perfect.
So when you build a tile set, you have to generate tiles at a bunch of different zoom levels. High zoom tiles provide a lot of detail about a small area, and low zoom tiles, you have to throw away 99% of what's in OpenStreetMap and just keep the really important stuff that you're going to show, like country borders and big cities and major roads. But once you have this tile set, you can create a style sheet which defines what the tiles are going to look like when they're shown to the user on screen. What color to use for the water and what line styles to use for the roads and all that kind of stuff. And you have a lot of creative control at this stage. Sourdough is not the only open source vector tile schema. There are several existing ones, namely Open Map Tiles and Shortbread, which you may have heard of. So if these already existed, why did I make a new one? And the answer is that these existing schemas kind of all optimize for the same thing, which is small tile sizes for production maps. So they include kind of only the necessary data from OpenStreetMap for making a general purpose map, like the kind you see on Google or Apple, where you have roads, buildings, certain classes of POIs, and maybe basic land cover data. They also reorganize and normalize OpenStreetMap data to try and make it easier for map makers to consume. And I want to emphasize that those are totally reasonable trade-offs to make. These are not bad ideas. They're good ideas for many use cases. But there's kind of an unexplored quadrant in the design space for tile schemas. And so Sourdough intentionally takes the opposite design approach. Instead of optimizing for small tile sizes, Sourdough puts as much data into the tiles as possible. And instead of creating an abstraction to try and simplify OpenStreetMap's tagging model, Sourdough directly exposes OpenStreetMap's tagging model in the vector tile schema. So in comparison, existing schemas are optimizing to make the tiles small. So they're only including essential data, and they're reorganizing that data for ease of use. Sourdough, in contrast, is including as much data as can fit in the tiles and presenting that data in a very raw form so that it provides map makers with maximum flexibility. So as a result, Sourdough tiles are packed full of data. They include nearly everything in OpenStreetMap at zoom level 15, which is the maximum zoom for the tile set. And at every zoom level, they contain more data than you would want to display at once. But because of that, they also offer a map maker the ability to pick and choose what they want to show and emphasize on their maps. And Sourdough does this while trying to keep tiles still under a budget of about 100 kilobytes per tile for typical tiles. Sourdough takes this approach of direct representation of OSM data. So OSM top level tags like buildings, highways, amenities, those become layers in the vector tiles. And within each layer, the attributes that are present on features directly correspond to tags in OpenStreetMap. And we include lots and lots of attributes. Basically, anything that might be relevant for rendering that feature, Sourdough tries to include. So Sourdough's goals are to be easy to understand, especially for people who are already familiar with the OpenStreetMap tagging schema and taxonomy, to support cartographic experimentation by including lots of data and letting map makers pick and choose what they want to show. It aims to showcase OSM's taxonomy and help improve it. Instead of trying to invent a new schema or normalize away inconsistencies in the OpenStreetMap data model, it highlights those inconsistencies, and maybe we as a community can use that to help sort out and improve the way we tag things. And finally, Sourdough is meant to be a hackable starting point. So if you build a map based on Sourdough tiles, and then you realize you need to customize the schema for your needs, you can fork the Planet Tiler implementation and hack away on it to your heart's content. Sourdough's schema and code are both in the public domain under the CC0 license, so you can do whatever you want with them. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. You don't have to give credit. Sourdough is currently pretty early. It's pre 1.0. There's some issues open on GitHub about problems and problems I'd like to solve and improvements I'd like to make to the schema before a 1.0 version. So if you have ideas or feedback on Sourdough, I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to leave a comment on any of those issues. And finally, Sourdough has a website, sourdough.osm.fyi, where you can learn more about the project. There's an interactive data viewer there where you can browse the tiles and get a feel for what kind of data is included. There's extensive documentation about the schema, and there are several examples of the types of maps that you can create from Sourdough just by defining your own style sheet. And those style sheets are also open source. So I hope you'll check it out and give me feedback. And that's, I think, all the time I have. Thanks so much for listening.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Next up, we have Kevin, who's going to tell us about Fast Charge, accelerating EV accessibility with better maps.
Hey, that's right. Thank you, Matt. Let me share my screen. All right, are we able to see that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so hello everyone. As Matt said, my name is Kevin Ratzel. I'm here to give you a quick primer on how OpenStreetMap can help improve the experience for drivers of electric vehicles, and to give you a bit of an update about how our mapping efforts are going in the United States. Just a fun fact, on this slide, you'll see a map of every charging station in the United States by Ultra. So thanks to Daniel for making that great tool. All drivers utilize OpenStreetMap for navigation in some way or another, whether they recognize it or not, whether it's in their favorite mapping program or in their navigation stack. This is further amplified when there's electric vehicle charging involved. That's because there tends to be a lot of pre-planning if you're going on a longer trip to avoid what Cambridge would call range anxiety, which you see here. There are a few commercially available maps out there to help with this. Most are proprietary, like PlugShare. Most car manufacturers also have an app with route planning and such to varying degrees. However, OpenStreetMap has increasingly been used in these applications, and the US community in general has a great opportunity to lead the way going forward, especially in the consumer side. So where are we right now? As of right now, in the Alternative Fuel Data Center from the Department of Energy, there's over 14,000 electric vehicle charging stations in the United States. That is improving over time, but that is a somewhat inflated figure due to them adding some stations that are, each charge point is a charging station, and some are just the proper charging station. So while that is probably slightly higher than the true number, that is a good ballpark for the overall. It's self-reported. They have partnerships with a lot of the different brands that put in this infrastructure. So you get all the benefits and risks of self-reported data there. In OpenStreetMap, we have over 8,000 of these stations mapped. We do tend to have a bit higher bar for surveying and ground truthing. We also have some cleanup to do. Same thing where each charge point was sometimes put as a station. You'll see a QR code here that goes to a map roulette challenge that may or may not be working at this time. I'll check after this presentation, but that will, or does, help you if you want to do some armchair mapping to help out the cause for that. When you're out in the field and you stumble across one, you may wonder how to tag one of these stations. I've put a few examples here. They come in all shapes and sizes. For this mapping talk and for most of my EV discussions in the OSM, We're talking about DC fast chargers. So that's these Coke machine size dispensers that you're seeing here on the screen. And you see they have a lot of different varieties, whether they have amenities, restrooms, whether they're just in the back of the parking lot, they're covered, etc. And we have all sorts of OpenStreetMap tags that you may be familiar with to cover those. When you're out in the field and you don't drive an EV, you may wonder what's the most important thing, how you can help out drivers that do. The most important thing would be to add what connectors, of course, where the location is, but of course, what connectors you're looking at. In the US, you'll see one of three. It'll either be NACS, which is the old Tesla connector. You'll see CCS, which is the most common connector type, or you'll see old CHAdeMO connectors. Those we're only ever using the Nissan Leaf, and they're typically at municipal stations that are older. Most commercial operations are focusing on NACS and CCS at this point. If you get ambitious, you can always look at the regulatory label on each of these dispensers. You'll find a whole lot of information on them. It could be overwhelming, but I'll bring your attention to the probably the most important one out of this one would be the output tag. So in this case, it's socket NACS output, would be 400 kilowatts. And that would give a driver a good idea about how fast their max output would be. So these aren't required, but these are certainly nice to have. With each of these stations, the OpenStreetMap becomes more reliable for these drivers, in which case they start using it more, just becomes more reliable down the road. It's a big snowball. So I encourage you all to add a station if you have them in your communities. And again, if you don't and you want to contribute to the cause, there's the QR code for the Map Roulette Challenge. And if you have questions, we do have a channel on Slack. It's #EV, or you can always message me directly. Thank you, everyone.
All right, let's keep rolling. Min's going to tell us about History Hits the Road.
Yep. Let me see. Can I share my screen?
I hope so.
Oh, there we go. Yep. Yeah, I have to request that.
Kevin, will you relinquish control?
There we go. All
Perfect.
right. So hey everyone. My name is Ming. I just got back from a road trip across the American Southwest, and I guess I want to keep that vibe going. So I'm here with the combination of two projects that I'm involved with. One is Americana. OSM Americana is the showpiece map, I guess you could say, of the OSM US community. It evokes a classic road atlas, and you can find it at americanamap.org. One of the favorite features of this map is all the little route shields we have, and we've started to kind of like break into some of the more obscure route shields, some of the more obscure coverage of routes such as historic Route 66. And this is not, I think in OSM, you often hear people criticizing historical mapping, but like this is still there, right? Like I took this photo a couple weeks ago. You can't miss these signs. But there's kind of some aspects of describing our world that aren't so present anymore. Like really in OpenStreetMap, what happens when the roads sort of wither away, or when the routes kind of stop being used? And so to answer that question, some of you who've been around have heard me harp on this a lot. The other hat I wear is Open Historical Map. By the way, this hat has a giant sloth on it. That's why I'm wearing it. And Open Historical Map is kind of like the other half of OpenStreetMap. It's the blanker half, but it's also the half that has a lot more opportunity to map things that haven't been mapped before yet. And so a couple slides ago, you saw Flagstaff. This is also Flagstaff in 1965. It's a little bit different. No interstates, but you got the route. You've got the routes in there, and this is all courtesy of Matthew Anderson for mapping this. Um, this is all well and good. I mean, Open Historical Map has kind of the analogs to all the OSM tools you're used to. We have a render, we have vector tiles, we have overpass, and you can even do nifty things like, interactive sliding between then and now and stuff like that. But do you see anything missing here? There's no shields. What like self-respecting road mapper is going to use something without shields? So um, uh, we're trying to kind of like bring together the Open Historical Map and OSM Americana projects to create Open Historical Map Americana. And to do that, we have to get both projects up to speed a little bit. So you heard Jake talking about vector tiles and the importance of vector tile schemas. Um, OSM Americana depends on the OSM US tile service, which has its own schema. But Open Historical Map has its own schema, which is more optimized for history. And so we had to kind of reconcile it two. Ruben, our backend engineer, has done a lot of work to expose a lot of the rich detail that our mappers have, um, to be able to show them in a style sheet like this. Without kind of like just droning on about the various keywords you see here, I think it's probably best to give a demo. I'm going to live demo online. Let's see how well this works. Okay, so this is the most important town in the world to U.S. road geeks, Lyman, Colorado. No particular reason. This is what it looks like now. You see so you guys see like the shields for US 24 and US 40, and that's all well and good. But what you can do is you can also go back in time. All right, so maybe 2005, not too much has changed. But then if you go back to like the 80s, okay, there's some differences here. The 60s. And as you start to go back a bit, okay, so the interstate's gone, right? And then you keep on going back, you keep on seeing little differences. And I think this is going to be really cool for being able to explore more than what OSM Americana has, more than what you normally see in OSM renders. And as I go out further, you can see, I mean, this is a courtesy of David Jenny, a lot of really cool historic route information that's already in the map that just needs to be exposed. So going back to my slides, we're not done with just exposing all this stuff. There's also other issues like the evolution of the iconography, the route shields, and so forth that we still need to encode because this is something that OSM Americana hasn't really focused on in the past. So calling all road geeks who really geek out about this stuff, this is actually your opportunity to make a splash, put this on the map, on a map that really hasn't ever been made before. Also, if you noticed, my demo was a bit laggy, and so to be able to support all of this, we really need to be able to improve the performance of OSM Americana, the base of this project, to be able to do all the time filtering with all this massive data about the past. And I'll leave it here. You can visit both Americana and Open Historical Map. I'll also drop a link to the proof of concept of OHM Americana. And I'll also put a plug here. Open Historical Map just launched a donation drive for 2026. And so this is your opportunity to help the infrastructure that keeps all this stuff possible. Thank you.
Yay, perfect. Thanks so much. All right, next up we have Arlen, who will tell us about mapping waterways in the Catskills. All right. There we go. You've taken control. Perfect. You may be muted. I haven't heard you yet. I love this image. You're still muted if you're chatting. I can't hear you. Oh no, technical. Arlen, if you want, I can go and do mine, and you can sort that a little bit. Okay. All right, we're juggling some things here. This is how we do it, right? We just let's see. How do I go to presentation? Slideshow. There we go. Share. All right, next up is me. I'm going to be talking about mascot map. Can everybody see that? I hope so. Hi, I'm Matt Wilden. I am the current president of the U.S. OpenStreetMap U.S. Board of Directors, but I am also an avid mapper of all things silly and ridiculous. So I'm here to chat about a project that I've been running for a little while called Mascot Map. This will touch on some tools for it, the community we built it for it, and how I enjoy keeping OSM a little bit weird. So why do I like the map? I like the map because the map is a way of exploring our world and also sort of understanding pieces of it. And I always find interesting and weird things about wherever I am mapping. So very often when you're mapping, you will be looking at some aerial imagery that looks like this. This is some grounds of a high school somewhere. You map the tennis courts, you map the softball fields, you map various things. I was doing a map roulette challenge to add lanes tagging to this track here. So this is, I think, 8 lanes, 10 lanes, very many. But I was sort of noticing and being amused by how in the United States we have this concept of a school mascot, the sort of plural noun you use to describe your school. These are the Monarchs, and that we were very proud of this, and we emblazon it onto our football fields. And I kept seeing this come up, and I was just like, oh, that'd be funny. That'd be a funny thing to tag, but never really did anything with it. And then I ran across this one. This is the Alamosa Mean Moose, and I was like, well, that's so unique and weird. I have to tag this. I will want to be able to share this with somebody sometime, and if I tag it inside the map, then I'll be able to find it later. So what can we put on the map? Let's do one more example just to do it. We don't always just put it on the end zones of things. Sometimes it's put on the track over here. So if you are an experienced mascot mapper, you will know exactly what that says. And if you aren't, we're very proud of our mascots in the United States. We put them everywhere. We put them in our URL links. We put them on our logos. We name the streets of the schools after them. We put them on the handbooks everywhere. These are the Wildcats. Which we go back one slide, you can now clearly see that says Wildcats. So because it's pretty obvious what's going on, I think this fits perfectly into the map, because what can we map? We can map anything that is verifiable and what is on the ground. And what is more on the ground than a giant patch of ground that says Wildcats? So we made a wiki page. I didn't want anybody to be confused about what I was doing. I made a bad wiki page, to be honest, and somebody came along and made a good wiki page, which is part of community here, and I always appreciate that. I got thinking about how it would be cool if I could find all of the high schools that have a have a football field near them. Well, with Overpass, don't read this, this isn't important, but with Overpass you can do that. So this will give you every high school in the United States that is near, within 500 meters of a football field. So then you can use that to generate a map roulette task, because I thought that would be fun too. Everybody can help out and do those things. So this is that same high school, but in map roulette, and then you can clearly see that it's written there, the Monarchs. You can add it, you can do those things. There are still tasks open for each of the states. I will post the link to that in just a bit. Once you've got all the data in there, I really wanted to have a visual. So I made a map, and I use Ultra to do this. There's going to be some other talks about Ultra today. Other folks who have made maps with Ultra also. I picked a set of glyphs and stuff that I host on GitHub, and made some editorial decisions about what those glyphs should be. You can scroll around and kind of find stuff. That's a pretty cool thing. Someone posted when we first started this that they were the first mapper to map a mascot in Asia. So this is not entirely US phenomenon, but it is pretty centralized in the United States. How are we doing? So far, we have 7,200-ish mascots. That's across all levels of school, elementary, middle, and high school, of course. Universities, I think, are also getting mapped. About once a week, somebody will message me about some weird mascot thing that they're trying to figure out. And so what have we done when we make one new tag? What's better than one new tag? Many new tags. So now we have all sorts of weird tags we're trying to do to sort out various edge cases for all of these things. I'll just talk briefly about this second one, mascot iconography. So one of the problems that we ended up having a lot is if this says the monarchs, do they mean the kings and queens, or do they mean the butterflies? And so you can take a poll here, figure out what you want. But the astute among you will notice that they have this lion in the middle. The iconography here is actually a lion. So if you go there on mascot map and it's tagged correctly, it will show a lion and not a butterfly. Some of my favorite mascots I found along the way. There's a high school called Polka in West Virginia. They are the dots. They are the polka dots. The Clockers are a hysterical mascot because a famous person made a clock there one time, and then Idaho has not one but two potato-based mascots. One more silly trick before we go. I thought, how do we get more out of this data? We build maybe a web scraper. So I built a little web scraper that looks for this class of text, home of the, and then it will dump a bunch of things into a table for you. This relies on website tagging inside of OpenStreetMap. I don't do any guessing or any sort of matching of that. So it's just another place to show where just any tagging can help somebody else find another thing that's going on. So even just adding those little things eventually adds up for everybody. I think that is my slides and almost certainly my time. Let's head back to where are we? Arlen, are you back?
You guys hear me now?
Hey, I can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
I switched to my webcam mic instead of my headset mic. So
Hardware. All right. Well, take it away.
okay, so I live up in the Catskills in New York, and kind of got into OSM mapping. Seeing a few trails that were missing, but we're in a hiking area. Most of the trails are pretty well mapped. And what was really missing in the Catskills with we have a lot of beautiful streams that weren't on the map yet. You can see here's one of the pictures. So I started doing a lot of streams, just kind of here and there at first, and you can kind of see this is waterwaymap.org. You can kind of see areas where it's mapped pretty well, and then some areas that aren't mapped so well. And then just before the holidays, I actually started a task in the task. Oh, where's the tasking manager here? Okay, I started a task in the tasking manager to be a bit more systematic. So I get all the areas mapped really well. And I was gonna show a little in QGIS here. You can see these kind of turquoise lines are stuff that I've mapped, and then these other lines are what actually is the 3DHP and NHD lines there. They're much less accurate, so we're actually getting quite a bit better accuracy than the USGS on some of these stuff. This is Catskill Creek and some of the tributaries there. You can see here where the person sketching for USGS, just skip that section for some reason. But I was going to show a little bit of my workflow. I use JOSM here. I've downloaded one of those squares and from the tasking manager. I use the New York Ortho's IR. This is 6-inch imagery. We actually just got the 2025 imagery available last week for Greene County now. So this is 2025 imagery from just last spring. And this infrared imagery has just better contrast with the You could see water better in infrared imagery than with the standard color imagery. You have all these trees would be dark and the water's dark, and then you can't really see where the water is. And then I overlay the 3D EP 1 meter unsmooth topo lines over, so I can get kind of feedback from both. I also sometimes use if it's really heavy tree cover, we'll use this terrain shading of DM model. So you can see this is a square. It's missing a couple streams here and here, and a couple stuff needs to be added. At the top of the square, some of this stuff is not very accurate. Kind of could be done better. So I would, a lot of stuff to work on. And then there's a lot of stuff where there's even more missing. So yeah, we have a lot of beautiful streams. We sometimes we have these ephemeral streams from the storm runoff, where you kind of have a stream on the steep section and it disappears when you get to a less shallow section. So you see these stream beds where you don't have as much of a permanent stream. I usually don't map those if there's not a permanent connection to something. Where's waterway maps? Here on waterway maps, you can kind of see where there's stuff that's not connected. So this stream isn't properly connected. I think it is connected now, but when they made their model, it wasn't. Someone made a lot of these streams just go into the lake and they have to connect to the edge of the lake, or not. Or you can draw like a waterway equals flow line through if you want to draw a flow line through a lake or reservoir. But someone had this stream and inside the lake, so it doesn't show it's connected up. It's a different color. You see the Delaware watershed is also a different color.
Let's do
Anyway,
one more minute, Arlen.
Yeah, I'm almost
got
up
it.
for time, so I was gonna just let someone else go. If you have any questions, you can contact me on the Slack. My OSM name is up there. Stop share.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. All right, our last talk in this block is going to be Emily talking about open wetlands map.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Sweet. Thank you all so much for the time today. I'm Emily. I'm a data scientist at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, and I am really excited to chat with you all today about the Open Wetlands Map. So first, just a little bit about EPIC. We are a nonprofit organization and a think and do tank using policy and data to speed up environmental and public health progress. We also work across a variety of different sectors that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, and we never work alone when working towards environmental progress. And that is particularly true for our wetlands work. As I'm sure many of you might know, wetlands are really essential ecosystems. They buffer our coastal communities from storm surge, they filter our water, they support really biodiverse habitats, and actually hold about 20 to 30% of global soil carbon, which is really vital in regulating our climate. But despite how important wetlands are and the ecosystem services that they provide, we actually don't have a comprehensive map of where wetlands currently are across the US. And the National Wetlands Inventory is one of the best sources of information on wetlands. But as you can see in the image in the bottom right, a lot of the imagery and data hasn't been updated since the 70s or 80s, as shown by like the orange and red areas, due to funding constraints. But wetlands are also very dynamic landscapes, and they move and they migrate very quickly over time. And so having outdated data creates problems where it's difficult for project developers to avoid impacts to wetlands and early in their project cycles. And for folks that do restoration, it's really hard to protect and restore wetlands when you don't know where they currently are and you're working off of an outdated map. In addition to that, the wetland data landscape is also very fragmented. And this slide is a little bit of a jump scare, but I thought it would resonate for all of us data nerds. But essentially shows a bird's eye view of the wetland data landscape that we've been able to map so far. To just briefly explain what you're looking at, data sets are shown as these boxes, and then the arrows denote the flow of data from one data set to another. The red arrows in particular show really rich data that is being collected but doesn't really get leveraged anywhere else across the data landscape and gets thrown into what I call this giant data void in the middle. And the National Wetlands Inventory is doing some really incredible collaborative work. But as you can see with the red arrows over here, there are also a lot of opportunities for collaboration. And we've been working with a group of wetland experts over the past 2 years or so to understand how this landscape can be better connected, such that we have access to more up-to-date and accurate information on our nation's wetlands. And all the discussions that we've had and conversations have organically led to this idea of an open wetlands map. And the open wetlands map is really beginning to connect this very fragmented data landscape. And here I'd also like to note that it doesn't aim to recreate anything, but rather complement the other data collection efforts that are already ongoing in this very fragmented data landscape that exists. So the vision with the Open Wetlands Map is, in collaboration with OpenStreetMap US, create an openly accessible and community-maintained data set of wetland observations in the United States. It's essentially leveraging the OSM framework of a community-maintained map and developing a map specific to wetland observations. And in the next slide, you're going to see this crazy map that I was talking about earlier. But as an example, data from the Open Wetlands Map could be a landing spot for data from citizen science efforts. So where data collected from a community-hosted wetland walk, for example, could feed into the Open Wetlands Map and also benefit the National Wetlands Inventory, and they can verify where their data needs to be updated or where polygons might need to be changed, or even verify the accuracy of state wetland inventories. Even just a picture and location of a wetland you see on your morning walk could be used as training or validation data to improve wetland models that exist. Or even data if you visit national wildlife refuges, data that you collect there could also feed into the Open Wetlands Map and be used by refuge biologists to better monitor and restore refuge land. So the main point here is that the Open Wetlands Map could serve as this connective tissue between various data collection efforts to make this very fragmented data landscape more connected so that we have a more modern understanding of our wetlands. And we need your help. We just kicked off this project in earlier this year, and we would love to chat with expert mappers like y'all and wetland enthusiasts to identify key features, attributes, tags, anything that comes to mind, we want to hear about it. And even if you don't know anything about wetlands, but love being in nature, kayaking, birding, love looking at water, looking at vegetation or trees, we want to hear from you and make sure that you can see yourself contributing to this map or using data from it in some way. So please fill out this interest form. I promise it will take just 2 minutes and get in touch with me as well. So thanks for the time.
All right, thanks. Okay, we've run a little over, so the break is a little short, but everybody got through all their talks, and that's amazing. So we will see everybody in 2 minutes for the next wave of things.
All right, folks, we're gonna speed right along here after that quick break. And the first talk of the next block is going to be OpenStreetMap-driven broadband feasibility modeling with HexMap, presented by Catherine Crook, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Let me share my screen. Let's get this where it needs to be. Are we good here? Move you guys out? Okay.
Good.
Okay. Oops. Oops. Let's go back here. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Catherine Crook, and I want to thank Matt Wilden for, we had a chat at a local Seattle mapping event, and we talked about this. And so I decided that maybe I should bring this to more of an open mapping environment and talk about it. My name is Catherine, and I work for a company that developed a former startup that developed a application to do feasibility and detailed market analysis for broadband networks. What we are is a planning tool that allows for the funding to be placed in the right places and how that moves forward. I work for Quanta Telecom Solutions, and we are here to help with the recent $42 billion worth of federal funds that were released out into the open market to counties, cities, and anybody who is trying to get broadband to the home. As we're all well aware that previously, after COVID, we did not see a lot of connectivity, and these rural areas were really struggling with this. So we developed this HexMap so that we're able to kind of show ISPs, internet service providers, and investment companies on where to put the money so that those people can get connected and not have the connectivity issues that they do have. So we originally were a startup. We were formed as Hexvarium, and we were recently acquired year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago in July, by Quanta Telecom Solutions. That's part of Quanta Services, and we are transitioning into their larger corporate environment, but we're still trying to keep our ground roots to make sure that everybody who needs the information and can get access to broadband, it's available to them. So, challenges. We have quite a few of them. As we are a fiber model, which is different than something that's known as an HLD, which is a high-level design, which is an engineering to construction form. We have to let people with the money know where to go build this. And so they're wondering, do we go over here? Do we go over there? You show us where the rural areas are that have the most issues with the connectivity. So we take a lot of streams of data and we overcount and route mileage and distort cost assumptions if we're just going off of engineering documentation and as-built. So what we use is OSM street maps and right-of-ways so that it's consistent across the entire US so that we get the same fiber lengths each and every time. And we know it's not going to be a problem with our financial model as we push it through that. As you can see here, this is an output from our model that we show through our phase 1 through the application and the output. You can see here that we have, it follows the OSM streets and it devises and tells us the route mileage, which is a cost by foot. Fiber is by foot, and it takes about $1,200 to $1,500 to put fiber to the curb. So we use OSM, and it navigates this fiber route And then it allows us to do these little drops to every single home. And that way we're not missing any of the people along the route. We have two large inputs. We use OpenStreetMaps for right-of-way, which is our fiber build that is based off of that. And we also just recently added POI, which is points of interest. And we need that because the BEAD funding, the $43 billion, that's part of the funding requirement. So we have taken the OpenStreetMap POI and placed that into our mapping environment so that the local governments and counties can say, yes, we do have that embedded into the outputs. And then our others is through a paid data source that we do, and we have Cotality, which is, we chose them because they also have a financial component and they're part of the MLS. So if you're ever out buying a home or dealing with any kind of real estate, they're the ones that provide them. And we take their addressing points and parcels, because as we're trying to get to the home, that address point is really important. But if we're trying to just pass a parcel to get to an address, there's a lot of parcels passed with no structures on it, which rises the cost of putting fiber to a home. So if you say you have a home that's got a rural farming community or farming home that's out somewhere and you have to go 12 miles to get a route out there, chances are a local ISP doesn't want to put the cost to put the fiber to that location. So what they're going to do is say, hey, you know, maybe we'll wait on this, but this funding is supposed to like bridge that gap. And we have to show how many parcels it's passing and how many addresses are located within their route. So this is a market analysis route modeling, not a construction or high level design for engineering. We pass this on to the investors and to the money people, and then they say, okay, yes or no. Then they usually go in and then they go and develop a high level design from what we've outputted. Actual fiber construction may occur on one side of the street or the other. So we use your center line of OpenStreetMaps, even though fiber will be built on either side of the road. That is developed in the high level design. This is just for money purposes only. We're trying to give them the ROI on this fiber build. They provide a natural and neutral backbone for estimating predicted mileage. So we can give them a pretty good understanding of, you know, within this area of interest, you have maybe, you know, 500 to 600 miles or 200 miles of fiber. And so to them, that's okay, it's going to cost us per foot to put that in the ground or aerial, and we're going to have to figure those costs out, which we do. So some of the issues we run into with our OSM right-of-way is we have to do a lot of, not a lot, but some QA, QC, as you can see here. Our fiber, automated fiber tool decided it was going to go across that river. So if we just use the OSM Street Maps imagery, you know, here with the background, you can see when we go into the actual imagery, we can see that it was an actual Riverwalk trail. And you can see in the upper corner where I pointed, they've taken that and mapped our fiber across that actual trail. So we'll have to go in and after our QA, QC, and we'll have to change that and reroute it and rerun it. These things come up frequently for us. So some mapped corridors are not legally or practically buildable. We get a lot of people for some reason who decide that a golf course path is a right-of-way, and it's not. Just because you can put a golf cart on it does not mean you can put fiber on it. We have a lot of things that we check the tags, and we have Amazon delivery drivers who tag their driveways if they're longer, but it is a driveway and not a right-of-way. So these things we have to constantly be looking out for. So we have to do a lot of QA, QC on this. So it provides us with a consistent nationwide coverage where others, you know, they fall short. As we all know from the previous discussions today, is that national data sets are very difficult to get our hands on. Every state does things differently. So we have to do it on a national level, and this helps us. Public right-of-way center lines enable us to do scalable, repeatable market analysis, so we know the output's the same every time. And then we can base that route and can slightly undercount mileage compared to side of street construction design, and that's for them to figure out later in their engineering components of it. So that's my talk. And thanks. And I'm happy to connect with anybody, talk about this. We've just added soils to it because digging in the ground is Colorado soil and Georgia soil, two different soils. So that's a big component for them as well. So we're trying to add more and more so that we can get people connected in these rural communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And we're going to move along to Vermont Address Import Lessons Learned, presented by Adam Franco.
Hello, everyone. So, hear me?
Yes.
Hello, these are lessons learned from the Vermont Address Import. So, about me, my name is Adam Franco. I've been a mapper since 2008 and engaged in a variety of OSM-related projects and initiatives over the years. And so first, why do an import? Well, our friends and families simply won't use OSM-based tools if they try to navigate and can't find their destination. As well, there are far too many addresses and updates happen too often to map them all manually and keep up to date. For the Vermont address import, we use Vermont's E911 dataset that has about 350,000 address points, 50,000 of which were already mapped in OSM via manual or other import processes. And these were imported in 263 town-by-town batches. This project was started in 2002 by, sorry, the typo there, 2022 by a mapper named Jared, who did most of the initial planning and script development, which I then took over going into 2023. And after a hiatus to work on other projects, the import was performed throughout 2025 with some additional help from Zeke Farwell. At the high level, what we do is we download the source data and we process it into an OSM format, then match it to existing OSM data to figure out what needs to change and what doesn't need to change, and then import that data into OSM using JOSM. When planning an import project, there are a couple of precursors. Should we add an external identifier when importing? We need to match manually added addresses on OSM tags anyway, and we can't rely on there always being an external reference. That said, storing an external identifier in the tags will help disambiguate which objects were conflated with the source points when there are multiples nearby and future updates are being performed. I strongly recommend conflating addresses with buildings and points of interest. Importing standalone address points, not parted with those objects, will cause duplication of addresses when they get added to the buildings directly and future confusion. And so before starting your import, I recommend you merge existing standalone address points onto buildings to avoid that future confusion when you're actually importing the addresses. You can use overpass queries to download just address points that are contained within building areas. And the To-Do plugin makes it quick to step through the list, and keyboard shortcuts can really speed that work and make it quite efficient. So onto the import. The street part of the address in the source data may be all caps, might be missing punctuation, and use many abbreviations, all of which don't fit into what we want in OSM. Many of the streets are easy enough to title case and expand the known street and road suffixes, but state and US routes will need expansion, and punctuation might be missing that's visible on signs. There may be abbreviations hidden in the middle of street names. Possessive apostrophes might be simple or unclear. And some proper names require apostrophes or mixed case. And initialisms and initials will require special case handling in whatever processing you're doing. And some streets might not even have names yet, especially if they're part of new construction. So overall, formatting street names is a non-trivial process and requires a lot of research as you go along to figure out what is correct and what should be imported. Additionally, some addresses won't have streets at all. Islands in our Vermont case, your area may have other cases where address place is more appropriate than address street. Moving on to the city field. In the Vermont case, the state doesn't actually know the correct postal city for most address points, only the enclosing municipality. The city part of the address for sending mail or navigation lookup might be the enclosing municipality, but often it is the name for the nearest post office, which might be the name of a village in that municipality or a neighboring one. And so when in doubt, do research because the source data might not actually be accurate. And also a reminder, zip codes are postal delivery routes, not areas. So we've processed our data into a full file for each town. But before importing, our scripts match the address points to existing OSM data to separate those that exist in correct form from those that are incorrect in various different ways, or are missing, or need additional review. By grouping your import data into batches of like changes, you can really speed up the review process. Additionally, this will also give you ongoing to-do lists for future updates as you refresh from both OSM and your dataset source over time. So now we're really ready for importing. JOSM's conflation plugin lets you select your source dataset in one layer and OSM data in another. It spatially matches the reference points to the nearest OSM objects. And when there are conflicting tags between the spatial matches, the conflation plugin provides an interface for identifying mismatch tags and allowing you to choose the correct ones. But the spatial matching isn't always going to select the correct OSM objects, especially in densely mapped areas. So manual review of matches is very necessary. But thankfully, when there are no OSM objects nearby, the conflation plugin will let you bulk add all of the rest with just a few clicks. So that was a brief overview of some of the lessons learned during this import project. The QR code is a link to these slides, and I think we have a couple minutes if there are any questions.
I don't see anything in the Q&A here, but everyone's welcome to submit questions there, and then those can also be answered by typing in the next during the next session. So I think we will go ahead and move on to give us a little bit of extra time to The Shape of Possibility Using OpenStreetMap Data for Smarter Growth by David Schneider.
Great. Let me share my screen and we can get started. So good afternoon. My name is David Schneider. Thanks for this opportunity to speak for a bit. I am a former civil servant who worked for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and I recently opened up my own consulting business. And I'm here to talk about a free educational resource that I've created that helps people with data and analytical tools for people that are interested in building better places to live and work around transit stations. This concept is called transit-oriented development. I'm a big fan because the notion that building good places to live and work around stations can help increase ridership, can reduce dependence on vehicles, if done right, can promote walking and biking, and also can begin to address our housing affordability crisis by building more housing. So this tool that I'm going to talk a little bit about is for developers, it's for urban planners, it's for local officials, transit agencies, as well as teachers and students and anyone in the public who is interested in the intersection of all of these ideas. Before I started this work back in 2024, there was a national map of transit stations and their surrounding areas, but the last time it was updated was 2014. So this is, I think, the only map of every station in the United States that has been around for a while. And so why don't I get right to it and talk about what it is. So you can get to the map itself. Hold on, let me move this thing over here by going to the atlas. So this is the website. It's called transitorientediscoveries.com/atlas. And this is a bit of a promotional page about the atlas. But rather than staying on this page, let's go to the atlas itself. Make sure you guys can see that. Okay, great. So Maggie, in her opening remarks, suggested that we take a road trip around the United States. And I'm going to suggest we take a little bit of a rail trip around the United States. So what you're looking at is a map of the United States. And each of these little blobs represents a transit system that has subways or commuter rail or light rail or streetcars or bus rapid transit, which is a kind of transit where buses sometimes have their own lane and go a little faster than regular buses, or ferry systems. As you probably aren't surprised to see, there's a lot of transit in the Northeast, but a bunch of other cities around the country have some large, some small transit systems, and every transit system has a station. And so all told, there's 5,100 transit stations on this map. And that includes transit systems that were opened up as of the end of December. And as new lines open up and new stations are added, I'll be updating the map once a year. Let's take a little closer look to my hometown, Washington, D.C. So this is the Washington Metro system in blue. The dots in red are transit stations that belong to different transit lines, like the Maryland commuter rail system. The other thing you can do is you can start putting circles around these stations and begin to look at the land uses around all of the stations. I find that once you put a circle around something, things become into focus. I have a page called Stations, which is sort of what it sounds like. Here, let me move this thing over here. I'm going to take a look at the Silver Spring station, which is the station that is closest to where I live. It provides some data from a different site called the National Transit Database. But the main thing you can do, on this page, is begin to look at all of the different types of land uses and transportation features within 200 meters, 400 meters, and 800 meters from a station. So this is the OpenStreetMap Carto base map, a very rich map, as all you know, thanks to everyone's mapping out there. You begin to just get a visual of what's around a station. The next couple of pages I have are more analytical, and they pull from the OpenStreetMap API. And each of the pages that I'll just briefly go through helps talk a little bit about the transit-oriented development possibilities and also challenges for dense and walkable areas around stations. So the first one I have is called development. We'll pull up Silver Spring too. So let's take a look at this map down here. What you see here is a 3D rendering of development around a Silver Spring station. The gray shapes are buildings, and the red shapes are surface parking or parking garages. And the item to the left is a kind of a reference map, so you see where things are. So I went in and based on OpenStreetMap data, have created a 3D rendering of the area around the station. And then I also have at the top some basic facts based on this data. So the number of buildings, the development pattern, and the number of parking lots and garages. And then in the interest of time, I won't go into this, but I also have some estimates of how many houses could be built on surface parking lots or garages without going to the tallest height. So this is really a rich data set. One of the challenges I've had, of course, is that while the number of buildings and the building surface are pretty well documented in OpenStreetMap, the building heights are not. A lot of these places are undermapped when it comes to height. Silver Spring is pretty good, and you get to see the kind of urban form about some dense development around stations and residential development near further away. But that's a bit of a challenge. Then I also have, of course, on every page, I have some methodology so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. I try to be as transparent as possible. Let's go to the next one. It's called barriers. So what this is going to show, we analyze the barriers, and actually you'll be able to see it right now, kind of going through, fetching the tiles from OpenStreetMap, detecting the road barriers. And while this is loading, I'll explain that I'm using the OpenStreetMap. Where did it go? Yeah. Oh, here it is. Okay, good. So let's take a look at what we're looking at. Over on the left is the same map that you saw before. And over on the right is highlighting arterial roads like Georgia Avenue over here, as well as primary roads. And what I'm doing here is I'm using the OpenStreetMap kind of road network hierarchy, right? And the colors that represent different roads, which are the same across all stations. And I'm applying a little bit of computer vision to identify not just where the roads are, but how much surface area around a transit station is covered by roads. So if I scroll down a little bit, hold on for a sec. I'm losing my mouse. Let's do this. Okay. I can now tell you that there's about 123,000 meters of busy streets, or about 6% of the area. So this is an example of a kind of tension point. So on the one hand, there's a transit station here, right? And on the other hand, there's all these busy streets around it, making it not always easy or comfortable or convenient for people to get to the transit station. Let's take a look at another one, which has to do with the street network. This is the street network around the station. Let me see if it'll load. And so what this is going to show is not only the number of streets, but the number of intersections and the average street length, and things that make a neighborhood walkable. So areas with relatively short streets prevent cars from speeding because there's an intersection. They're generally more pleasant to walk down. They're more convenient, and they are able to just have a higher level of pedestrian accessibility. While this is waiting, I can show you that I already have some of the metrics in terms of the block length, the intersection density, etc. If this takes, and then it has a kind of categorization that I've used based on the information that is gathered. So here we go. So this is, you can see the red dots are the intersections, and the lines here are the streets. And it's just doing math on that information and giving it a score based on the more streets there are, the more intersections there are, the more walkable I consider it to be, because of the ability to walk and the convenience of walking when there's more streets and intersections. I'll do a few more before my time is up. This is called walkshed analysis. And so what this is showing is how far you can walk within a 15 minutes. So this is an isochrone. For those of you who don't know, isochrone, it's a Greek word. Iso means same, and chron means time. And so what this is showing is what's within a 5-minute walk in orange, a 10-minute walk in yellow, and a 15-minute walk in green. And this circle around it is what I call the theoretical maximum. So that's, imagine there were no barriers. You could just walk in any direction. That's how far you could get in a 15-minute walk. In Silver Spring, you can pretty much get pretty close to that theoretical maximum. And the reason you can is because there's no things like rivers or airports or, there are roads, but you can walk across them. And there's a pretty active street grid. So for any station, you can take a look at this map and you can get a little bit of a score, like 80% of the theoretical maximum is available. I'll just do one other walkshed just to give you a kind of contrast. Let's go over to Northern Virginia and we'll pull up the Rosslyn station. Again, you can watch the process go, fetching tiles from OpenStreetMap, requesting the isochrones, calculating the walksheds. And then while we're waiting, you can see that there's some information about how this works. So Rosslyn's a little different, right? So here, because there's the Potomac River, it's much more constrained. But it also, I think, poses a challenge. So there is a nice pedestrian bridge over the Key Bridge. You can get to Georgetown, right? But there's no bridge, at least according to according to the data, across this one here. There's no pedestrian path across this bridge. So even though the Kennedy Center is probably within walking distance, right? Or maybe just outside of walking distance, you can't get there from there. The last one I want to talk a little bit about is something called Complete Streets. So we've had some nice presentations already on biking and walking. Let's go back to Silver Spring. And hopefully this will load relatively quickly. Sometimes this is the one that takes the longest to load. But what it is looking at is the number of street segments and the number of segments with sidewalks and the number of segments with cycling infrastructure. So I've pulled some of that data already. Oh, here it goes. All right, great. So we have the Silver Spring Station, right? The information in green are sidewalk coverage. The stuff in red is no sidewalks. And the information in orange is bike infrastructure. And you'll notice that there's a gap between this little bike area over right by the station and the area over here. There is a big construction project right now. So ideally these things will match. Again, this is only as good as the data in, right? But I'm impressed with the amount of sidewalk coverage that I can see. I guess last but not least, if you're interested in just downloading the data, you've got data and the dictionaries. So if you want to take a look at a whole bunch of stations or information about a rail line or a specific county or zip code or kind of do your own analytics, I think that there are a lot of things to do. So I guess my closing statement is that maps are informative and they also can make an argument. And I'm hoping that this map and data can not only inform, but can also make an argument for better places to live and work around transit stations. So I'll just pull up my contact information. So again, it's oops, sorry about that. connect@transitdiscoveries.com is my email address. And transitorientedDiscoveries.com is my website. So I will stop sharing and happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Thank you. And then we are going to move along to what's new at OSM US, presented by Jake and Melissa.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me get my screen up. I think that should work. Yeah, we're really excited to talk about what's new over at OSM US. I'm Alyssa, I'm the program coordinator, and I'm going to be joined by Jake in just a couple slides, who's our software engineer. All right, got a couple program updates right off the bat. The first one has to do with our OSM US micro grant program, which we launched last year back in 2025 to provide financial support for folks hosting community events or educational initiatives or travel as it relates to OpenStreetMap. So we made a few changes to that program this year just to make it easier for folks to apply for a grant if they'd like it. The first is that we expanded the education focus grant. So you can now apply for funding to support any OpenStreetMap related activity or classroom materials in that educational setting. And we have now opened up the applications for the microgrants year round. So you can apply whenever you'd like to apply. We also went through a bit of restructuring as an organization as it relates to our charter project program. With our charter project program, we become the fiscal sponsor for projects in the OpenStreetMap ecosystem. So we give them a financial and a legal home. Just in the past couple months, we welcomed Youth Mappers as a charter project, which we're really excited about. And we also had two projects kind of graduate the program. So OSM Shaw and Map Roulette are now hosted fully under the OSM US umbrella, so we can allocate our core budget to the further maintenance of those projects. You heard a bit about the camera grant update from Harold, Sean, and Megan earlier today. I do just want to reiterate that applications are still open. So if you collect street level imagery in your area, we're partnering with Mapillary to send the latest GoPro Max camera and some accessories your way to help support, different aspects of the mapping workflow. And yeah, we have a couple cameras left, and in the spring, we'll put out a recap blog post once we've sent out all 40 cameras. I also want to shout out our working groups. It's been a great year, but also past couple months for our working groups. If you're unaware, OpenStreetMap US hosts a number of working groups that meet virtually to talk about a bunch of different topics in the mapping world. We started a maintainers working group for developers of tools related to OpenStreetMap. The pedestrian working group also released version 1.0 of their sidewalk mapping schema in the past couple months. And we gave the website a little bit of a refresh, so it's easier to join and participate in the working groups that you're interested in. Jake will talk a little bit more about our public events calendar, which we're really excited about. And we have some quarterly newsletters for some of our working groups as well. All right, that's it on the program side. So I'm going to pass it over to Jake.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Jake. I work as a software engineer at OpenStreetMap US. So I help maintain a lot of the tech and tools that we provide as free services to the OpenStreetMap community to help people map and use the data. So as Alyssa mentioned, MapRoulette, one of the tools that we maintain, became a full-fledged program of OpenStreetMap US this month. Which, among other things, means that we can spend some of our staff time maintaining it. So we're looking at the roadmap for that project again. One of the things that, or several of the things that are on the roadmap for MapRoulette in the coming months are a server migration and database upgrade, modernizing the front end code. MapRoulette is open source and welcomes contributions. We want to make that easier. Working on some UI improvements around challenge browsing and searching, and also some other new features that were requested from some of you who may have filled out the user survey that we sent out back in, I believe, October. Next slide, please. And as Alyssa mentioned, OSM-CHA also became a program. So we're looking at ways that we can invest in that tool in the near future. We're working on a backend upgrade right now to bring it onto a much more recent version of Django. Also, like MapRoulette, we're working on modernizing the front end code to make contributing to OSM-CHA easier. Doing some maintenance on the Kubernetes cluster that runs the application. And last, but definitely not least, working on performance improvements for filtering change sets in OSM-CHA and also for RSS feed generation. So if you subscribe to a filter using your RSS reader. If you're a user of OSM-CHA, you have probably noticed that both of these things are very slow right now. So something we definitely want to work on. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the OSM US tile service. This is a web server that provides vector tiles and related resources that you would need to make a map that's based on OpenStreetMap data. What's new with the tile service is last fall, we launched it to the public. It's generally available now. It is free to use for low volume, non-commercial use. So it's intended for people in the OpenStreetMap community to use it to build maps that showcase OSM data for the benefit of everyone in our community. It currently provides open map tiles, schema vector tiles, and it provides fonts that are compatible with the MapLibre renderer. And it's used by a bunch of projects in our ecosystem already. It's used by Americana, Slice OSM, OSM-CHA, a lot of tools in the OSM ecosystem that show vector-based maps are using these tiles already. Things that are on the roadmap for the tile service would be serving tiles in more schemas to give people more flexibility on what kind of maps they want to build, providing more fonts, providing pre-made sprite sheets so that you can easily put icons on your maps, and also potentially providing ready-to-use style sheets that bundle all of those things together so that you have a really plug-and-play way to display a map if you want to build a OpenStreetMap-based map into your tool. Next slide. So the OSM US Tasking Manager is a tool for coordinating groups of mappers who are working on improving OSM in a specific area. It's developed and maintained by the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, Hot OSM, but we run our own instance of it that's available for use by the US community. And what's new with the Tasking Manager, we recently updated the versions of ID and Rapid, both browser-based editors that are included in the Tasking Manager UI. So if you edit OpenStreetMap through the Tasking Manager, you'll be able to use the latest features that are in both of those editors. And we also modernized the authentication flow. So when you log into Tasking Manager, we're now using a new path for logging in with your OpenStreetMap account because the APIs that we used to use had been deprecated. And what's on the roadmap is upgrading to Tasking Manager version 5. So the Hot OSM team has released a new version of Tasking Manager that has some new features and also a bunch of performance improvements on the back end. So that's something we definitely like to deploy ourselves at some point. Next, Field Papers. So Field Papers is a pen and paper mapping tool. You can print out a map, mark it up in the field, and then scan it and use it as a base map to update OpenStreetMap. What's new lately is we rewrote the Field Papers tiler service so that when you scan your annotated map and then you want to load it in ID or JOSM as a base map so that you can trace from it, that will load much faster. That used to have serious performance problems, and we have hopefully resolved all of those. So if you were frustrated by that in the past, give it another try. Things that are on the roadmap are to migrate that application off of Heroku, which is where it's currently running, probably to DigitalOcean, which is where we host almost all of our other services, and also to upgrade the version of MySQL that the backend is using because it's using an old version of MySQL that has reached end of life. Next, LayerCake. So LayerCake is a service that we run that provides thematic extracts of OpenStreetMap data in GeoParquet format, which is a cloud-native file format that's really great for lots of forms of analytics. There are 4 existing layers available through LayerCake: buildings, highways, boundaries, and settlements. So those are classes of features from OpenStreetMap that we take and we create GeoParquet files for them that are available for you to query and analyze in the cloud. We're working on 2 new layers currently: parks and protected areas, and also POIs like businesses, schools, hospitals, other amenities. And feedback on those is welcome. So check out the GitHub if you have ideas for those, or if you have feature requests for additional layers, or want to know how to kick the tires on LayerCake, and tell us what you think of it. Next slide, please. Other small things. So we have a new sign-up form on Slack. We were having problems with a lot of spammers and robots joining the Slack. So shout out to ENDs who worked on a new version of the sign-up form that should help prevent that while still making it pretty easy for people to join. And then we also have a new event calendar, as Alyssa mentioned, on our website, openstreetmap.us/calendar. We'll show you the upcoming schedule for all of our working groups and also happy hour events. And finally, next slide, please. A couple of new partnerships on the tech and tools side of things. So one that you've already heard about, Open Wetlands Map in collaboration with the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, EPIC. This is a tool for that we hope will help people both collect and distribute wetlands data through OpenStreetMap. And the other partnership is the OSM Classroom, which we're working on with the TeachOSM community, funded by a grant from the Schiff Foundation. And that is going to create some new tools that will help educators incorporate OpenStreetMap into their classroom curricula. And that's it for tech and tools. I will just say, before I hand it back to Alyssa, that everything that we work on at OpenStreetMap US is open source, and contributions and feedback are welcome. So if anything that I've talked about just now is interesting to you and you want to know more, or you want to get involved, come to the Tech and Tools office hours tomorrow and we can chat more about it. And I'll hand it back to Alyssa. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Seeing as we are eating into the break, you can tell we are very busy over here at OSM US, and we've got a busy couple months ahead too. So I will just end it off by saying, please keep your eyes peeled for information about elections and State of the Map US. And I would also love to give a thank you to the members of OSM US because they really help keep us running over here. So with that, I will turn it back to Harrison.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have just about a 1-minute break, and then Carrie will take over and introduce the next sessions.
All right, we're back. It's me, not Kiri, but I am here to introduce folks. The next talk, we had a block of lightning talks here, so I'm going to go pretty quick. Our next talk is going to be from Quincy, who's going to talk about what the map is, and I'm quite excited to hear about that.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here.
Do the AV real quick.
Cool, can you see that?
Yep, go for it.
Excellent. Awesome to be here, Matt. So I've been thinking a lot about what the map is for the past couple of years, but definitely the past few months as I'm working on a new project. And I want to posit that possibly the map is too full. This is actually an older screenshot, so it's gotten even fuller since here. I'm not saying the map's complete or finished or anything, just that there's a lot of stuff there. And if you're a new mapper, you're going on to ID, you're going on the editor, and you open this, I think I know a lot of people in my life who would close this immediately and throw their computer out. ID is relatively easy to use, but it's still a lot of data for somebody who only wants to edit a couple features to be looking at. So where do we go from here? I think there's one cool avenue that I've thought of, which is thematic maps. These have been around for a while. This is an old school one that I still use quite a lot, Open Railway Map, where you just want to look at a certain segment of OpenStreetMap. There are dozens of these out there. Here's another cool one, Open Infrastructure Map, looking at power and pipeline and things like that. Here's one that I actually built, Open Trail Map. Really cool view of all the trail and canoe trail data in OpenStreetMap, if I do say so myself. And here's a recently popular one, DFLOC, where you can go in and view all of the police scanning devices that have been mapped on OpenStreetMap. And I think these have been really successful to encourage better data, because if you're only looking at the data that you care about, then you can see the issues with it. You can see a lot of blank space on the map that you're looking at. And they also foster community because it brings together people who are all interested in the same type of data and making that data better. However, I think for the normal average person, they're hard to create. You can't just go on and make the theme that you care about very easily. They can be inconsistent because they'll run on different stacks, different repositories. They're often limited in what they can do. Some of them you can edit the data. Some of them are updated immediately. Some of them has to load from Overpass. It's all kinds of different, interesting, fun open source ecosystem of tools. So I've been thinking about how to make this situation better. And so just today I launched this website called themap.is, the map is. And rather than talk about it, I'm gonna just give a quick demo here. This is live and we have all the data that we need to view all kinds of maps in map tiles. So in this case, we have the map.is/restaurants. Map is restaurants. You can scroll around, but it's actually almost 1,000 themes already loaded into the app, and this is only in the last week. So if I want to go look at fast food, this is a different tag in OpenStreetMap, so it loads immediately. But let's say I want to see all the pizza places, regardless of whether they're fast food or restaurants. I could filter by one or the other, or vending machines even. And I just want to see pizza. And the map just loads the data immediately because all the data is in the tiles, and the tiles are updated minutely from OpenStreetMap. And there's all kinds of things I can find. So if I want to just look for bike shops, we can do that. One up there. Or if I just want to look at all the bike infrastructure in general, we're going to have bike routes, bike parking, bike rentals. So I can really plan a whole bike excursion just here. And we're looking at Philadelphia, but this data works for the whole world. So if I zoom out, it works across scales. So we have all the bike routes shown here. I can switch to another theme if I want to look at maybe Rails Transit. So right now we're looking at all the Amtrak lines. And these are all map tiles that are only a few hundred kilobytes at most. And we can even go to parks, or let's do protected areas. Just a little different tag on OpenStreetMap. can zoom in, we're looking at parks, and I can filter by the ones that I want to look at. So I want to look at forest reserves. This will be state and national forests. But I can also look at things that are just from a specific operator. So maybe I just want US Forest Service sites to work on the styling here. But we can zoom into to an area where I know there's a lot of data that's been mapped. And it's not just the sites themselves, it's showing all data that's from this operator. So we're looking at trails and campgrounds and such, and we can go in and add icons later. And if I wanted to edit any of this data, I'd love to build editing right in the app, but for now we can just jump out to OpenStreetMap, editor, and edit in ID. And then if we save it and then go back here and wait a minute or two and then reload the page, then the new data will appear right here on the map. So yeah, I'd love to show you more, but we've limited time. It's one website, and there's a dedicated page for each theme, and there's thousands of potential themes that we could create together and create a dashboard for each of these themes to get mapping and build community around. All these tools are free and open source, and we're just getting started. So there's a lot of use cases. If we want to show a specific type of feature or a specific topic or everything tagged with a certain network, these are some common cases. But you can tell me what kind of use cases you can find for an app like this. I think there's a lot more that I haven't thought of. And right now it's in public beta. It's definitely still in the development process. It's running on a tile server, so please be gentle with that. We need to do that to get minutely updates from OSM, and I'm bootstrapping that myself. So I'm definitely looking for partners, sponsors, and there's a little QR code if you want me to reach out to you, or you can reach out to me by email or on Slack. But yeah, I hope this will be a new direction for OpenStreetMap to spur a lot of mapping in a lot of cool areas.
Okay, perfect.
That's my talk.
Thanks, Quincy. Next up, Daniel is going to tell us about how OpenStreetMap is for the children.
Hey, yeah. So, can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I'm Daniel. I am a dad, map nerd forever, software engineer most of my life, and OSM mapper for a while now. And funny that I follow Quincy's talk. I'm a lover of thematic maps. As you may guess, as I am the guy who made Ultra, which is used for thematic maps such as Matt's mascot map and Kevin's EV map. But as a dad, I had an interest in new places that I previously may not have been interested in finding on the map. But OSM is the best resource for geodata. Like, where can I find playgrounds, schools, museums, toy stores, all kinds of things. They're all in OSM. But most maps are made with adult concerns in mind, where to get food, where to mail your stuff. Not necessarily what we're interested in at all. Not everyone looking at the map might be interested in. So I started building a thematic map, and I am excited to introduce to y'all what I'm calling OSM Kids. I registered the domain osm.kids. It features things such as aquariums, bookshops, botanic gardens, candy shops, fire stations, game shops, playgrounds, pools, toy stores, etc. Things that are of interest to a kid, or might also be just part of their worldview. Like, a school might not be super stoked on it all days, but they're a big part of their universe. At middle zoom, we've got cities. Low zooms, we got countries. These will probably take some work. Here's a little live preview. So here we got our little flag emojis for every country. You zoom in, you start to get a little bit slower tiles than you want, apparently. There we go. We get cities. This view, these two views can probably use huge improvement. I haven't thought about them much, but as we zoom in, we start to get more interesting places. We get museums, zoos, libraries, fire stations. You zoom in further to like a commercial area here, you get all the shops that you might be interested in going to. So how it's made, it is a Planetiler profile. So I do have to use a computer where I have a copy of the Planet PBF and have the resources to process it. However, once processed with the YAML profile, so it's pretty straightforward to author. It was my first time using it. I'd only used Planetiler Java profiles before, but it's roughly a 300 meg tile set. The front end, shocker, it's an ultra query that takes advantage of its built-in support for emojis as sprites and the HTML control. Next, we'll have community involvement. Maybe work with Quincy and have playground or kid-related layers in the map as well. Would love user feedback. Matt's daughter has given me feedback, and that has resulted in updates to the map, which, would love more feedback from people who have kids, either for how you might use it to find something to do or how your kid likes it. More POI types, that's somewhere I'd like to have community involvement. If you go to the repo, it's not terribly difficult to add a POI type. It's like maybe 4 lines of YAML. I probably want to build a bespoke front end and maybe customize the map style. I'd like if it like low zoom, it was, you know how you have the globe where each country is a different color? I'd like that. But yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks, Daniel. All right, we got a long timer here coming up. He's going to tell us about how useful are Mapillary photos for POI data. Perfect. It's muted. The audio's not coming through. Ilya, the audio's not working.
Do you hear it?
No, we don't hear it.
Oh, weird. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Uh,
No conference is AV trouble free.
yeah. Does it work?
Nope.
Okay. Well, doesn't matter. Then let me show you. It worked. So do you see it?
We can see your screen, yes.
Awesome. So I'll keep it shorter then. So I'm Razverev. I have created a Reader app, and that means I love to go outside and map. The problem is currently is winter, so my fingers just freeze off. So the question is, what can I do from home? And another problem is Mapillary and similar services. They have redefined the mapping as taking photos. So people boast that they have mapped entire villages or towns, like thousands of miles mapped, but actually it's just photographed, right? Photos are not map. Otherwise, your family album would be a map. So what can we do? How can we use those photos actually? Well, it's simple. Like we go to Mapillary and imagine we're like walking. So let's filter by something relatively recent. There's not much there. I will jump to the city. So let's find, for example, some imagery. So we're here. What do we do now? The thing is we use every door. If you zoom far enough, then you can choose where to go. And we can choose the same city. So now we're relatively at the same place. You can see by the maps, right? So when you look around, you can see the same things on the map. Like here is Boss County Tax Office, and we see it here. And it's still there, so we just marked that it's there. Like we have checked that it's still in the place. And now we're just like walking on the map, not actually walking on the street, but just doing the move. The Boss County collection, it's here, and we see it on the every door. So it's like we just moved past it. Like look around, look at things, zoom if you can do things. If we could have seen this shield, we could have added it to the map right from our app. We can just rotate it so it's easier to see. And for example, here's like Simple Simon's Pizza. Well, it's still here. So, but we can check the phone number. It's still correct. So we marked it. And that's basically how it works. We basically walk around, not outside, but at our computer. We can choose any city, any country. We can go to Africa, we can go to Asia, we can go to your hometown and just map it. And that's how we actually make the map better. So thanks.
Thanks. All right. Next up, we have Veronica, who will tell us about advancing transit equity in Tempe.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Let me share my screen.
Perfect.
Can you see it now?
I can. Let's see. Maybe it's loading. There it is. I see you side by side. It is you and your screen.
Yeah. Is it okay this way?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica. I'm originally from Indonesia, but now taking Master of Urban Planning at ASU. I will talk about advancing transit equity in Tempe, Arizona. So my question is, where is public transit service most needed given how much service people currently receive? And for this research, I only use bus service as the transit mode. For the data, I collected some of this: GTFS feed, US Census block groups, transit propensity index, and also S3 and reach analysis. And for the analysis, I use ArcGIS Pro for the transit frequency. I specifically use public transit data model and calculated the transit service frequency and then produce choropleth map, also heat map. And for the transit equity gap, I use spatial join with the match option of intersect and then producing transit equity gap from this three combination. And my first finding is this demographic need mapping. So for the first trial, I only applied 3 variables. And as you can see here, the hotspots are located on the northern part and central area, also on the east side. But a couple months later, I tried 9 variables from the transit propensity index. And if you can see here, the heat the hotspots are scattered around, and it's also located on the southern part. My next finding is transit frequency. Here, the map is for the bus stops. So I use bus stops and then calculated the transit frequency. And if you can see here, it's obvious that the surface is mostly in the north and central core. So the edges got less frequent surface, especially toward the south. So I also converted the map to the heat map, so it will be easier to read. This is my final finding, the transit equity gap itself. So I put two values, 0 and 1, and we will focus on the value 1 because those are the areas which have high priority need and low frequency. So this is our equity gap. And they are located along the east side and then southwest area. So I really hope that this map can help improve frequency and route adjustment, also support the first last mile for the people. And so what's next? I still have a lot of questions in my mind, like how are they distributed, the 9 TPI variables? And how does the county government create the index? And especially about the time sampling, when is the best time to sample GTFS data? Do we need to compare between weekday, weekend, or peak versus off-peak? And my last question is about the GTFS data itself. Is it better to use static feed data or real-time data? Because for now, I use only static feed data. Yeah, I think that's all from me. If you have any questions, just connect through LinkedIn or email me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. All right, next up, Tim is going to tell us about infrastructure mapping for community wildfire resilience. I've seen Tim on the map. I don't think I've ever met Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm going to present on some work that me and some of my colleagues have been doing in supporting rural fire resilience districts and specifically doing hydrographic mapping for resilience planning. These projects have specific challenges in that often they don't have like kind of professional staff that's persistently attached to them. And so there's kind of this episodic component of it. And it's also in a, an overtaxed planning environment. The geospatial assets in general are like a key component of the planning aspects, and people are often just kind of relying on whatever they gather. And what we're seeing is this need for kind of a fit for purpose review of the assets that are going into these planning processes. And I'm going to also talk, one of my specialties is I work with LiDAR and photogrammetric point clouds on almost every project. And we're at a point now where we've basically have a complete coverage, a nearly complete coverage of federal LiDAR within the last few years. And there is also a program that is attached to the 3DEP program, which is to develop 3DHP, which is the next generation of hydrographic products. And I'm seeing, and I brought this up in one of the recent working group meetings, an opportunity for OpenStreetMap's community mapping strategies to support the 3DHP product development and this is something that USGS will be developing over the next 10 years. One of the assets that we do all the time is these building protection zones. And so, these are regulated in our area, but basically we need to find emissions in the data regularly. One of our major focuses is going to be these hydrography data sets where road crossings of streams end up being vulnerabilities in post-fire landscapes and are like infrastructure points that need to be like when landscapes are burned, they have to be evaluated for their ability to manage the expected floods from them. these are examples from a 3DHP prototype that was done that I managed in 2022 and 2023. These are not OSM data products, but they're basically sites that were flagged as culverts, and there's an opportunity to kind of differentiate like how for humans in the loop to kind of identify how the water courses actually are, being passing through the infrastructure to kind of manage and keep the roads intact. This is a one of our projects using we're seeing on GeoSM our mapping of ponds and a water course. This dotted line is the existing NHD, which is NHD is at this point potentially up to 40 years old mapping, and clearly we have better approaches to map them. But I also want to point out this issue about if you use deterministic routing, you can see in this yellow line, this is
I'm not seeing your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, so let me back up. Okay, well, geospatial assets. This is the current 3-dep LiDAR coverage. Building protection zones are kind of becoming increasingly a regulated environment in which we're managing fuels at different buffers around occupied buildings. And then this is the intersection. The red is mapped roads, and the blues are the NHD lines, and the black lines are improved elevation derived hydrography lines. And so, clearly there's issues. NHD has a lot to gain from the next generation of updates, but for resilience planning, a lot of our communities don't want to wait potentially 10 years for updates in order to prepare their fire resilience planning. This is a USGS client 3DHP prototype that I was part of development of in 2022 and 2023, where the green dots are identified culverts, and the red dots in this lower part these are the hydro enforcement points where the raster digital elevation model is basically conditioned to allow the hydrologic model to operate. And these are the places where I think that there's a really interesting interface, because there are methods to kind of detect what's going on, but in many cases, the actual infrastructure that is on the ground may be different from what we expect from using the elevation. And additionally, that these are the points of the pain points in post-fire landscapes or in other floods where culverts, like for the example, the Hurricane Helena in North Carolina, there are probably thousands of culverts that failed in that circumstance. And so this is kind of an opportunity to identify assets in advance. And then this is the example that I'd gotten to, where the yellow line is an improved elevation-derived hydrography. This black dotted line is an existing NHD vector. And then this is this line, if you can see my cursor, is a place where the road geometry with the deterministic elevation-derived hydrography does not track with where the actual stream course is. So it's an opportunity for kind of a hydro enforcement edit, shall we say. And then, finding emissions and databases. We did a big ponds project. And then this issue about, for these community resilience projects, the benefits of active user contributed content is super important. How am I on time?
You wrap it up here would be a good idea.
Okay, that's all. That's good. So yeah, I will be talking about that tomorrow.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Okay, Jalo was going to talk, but I don't see them in the chat, and I think they're having internet difficulty. So we will perhaps shelve that and have to get a recording for the YouTube for posterity. Let's go over to Alyssa for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to share my screen here. It is me again. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for Mapping USA. I've just got a few reminders to close out our evening here. The first is that we've got board elections. The process has already started. Nominations are open. If you are an OSM US individual member, you could vote in our elections and you could run yourself. Being a member also helps support free events, much like this one. So please stay tuned for news about our board elections coming up. And one of the good ways to do that is through our monthly newsletter. We will send you monthly updates about events going on, program updates, tech updates. We promise we don't spam you. We try to be respectful, keep it to once a month. And of course, all of the recordings from today will be posted on the OpenStreetMap US YouTube sometime mid-February, and we'll send you an email when those are live. I also want to take this chance to invite everybody here to join us at State of the Map US, which is going to be June 11th to 13th in Madison, Wisconsin. It is, we like to say it's the mappiest party around, and it's our in-person annual conference. If you are an OSWS member, you receive a registration discount. And some important dates for State of the Map US that are coming up pretty soon here. Early bird ticket sales end tomorrow. So if you want the best price you can get on your SOTMIS tickets, got to make sure to get those in your bag. The call for proposals closes on February 16th, and the fellowship application closes on February 6th. If for any reason you need financial support to join us at State of the Map US, we highly recommend you apply for a fellowship. We ask you to volunteer, help us, run the conference, and in return, we will reimburse you for some lodging and travel costs, as well as give you a conference ticket. And of course, we hope to see you all tomorrow. The program starts at 11 a.m. Eastern. There's going to be 2 tracks with a number of workshops, office hours, and birds of a feather sessions. And that will be a regular Zoom meeting. Everybody should have received a link to join that in their email, and you'll get one more link tomorrow morning as well. So yeah, that's all the reminders I have. Thanks again for joining. Stay warm out there. And happy Mapping USA.
Everybody go mapping, Mapping USA.